We're going to shift gears, and our next presentation is with Nathan Jones, and he's the chief of the address collection for the U.S. Census. And this is in preparation for the 2030 decennial census. And I read that and I was like, didn't we just do that, right? And, but then it occurred to me that there are windows of opportunities, there's cycles to our work. And in a 10-year cycle, this is the optimal time to start thinking about how do we make the changes. By the time we really get into it, and it's close to collecting the census, the procedures are probably already quite set. Now, I would imagine, Nathan, that the concrete is still kind of wet or not even in the forms yet, right? So maybe this is the time for us to collaborate and think about that. So we're really happy to have you, and we'll lean into your presentation and the discussion that follows. Thanks.
Now that is behind us, again, thank you for the opportunity today to be here and engage with this awesome group. It's always good to be back. So as Frank alluded to, yeah, it might seem crazy that we're already talking 2030 census, but it's true. We already have a number of staff at the Bureau in the Geography Division that are engaging in a number of ongoing activities to get prepared for the 2030 census, to lay that groundwork. And a big part of laying that groundwork is collaboration and coordination with others outside of the Bureau. So that's a little bit about what I want to get across today, and recap a series of recent stakeholder focus groups that we conducted back in the fall. So let's go ahead and dig in there. Before I get too far into the meetings that we had conducted with our stakeholders, I want to give a little bit of background information on the Census Bureau's Geographic Support Program. So the Geographic Support Program, or the GSP, provides the infrastructure necessary for the Census Bureau's data collection, processing, tabulation, and dissemination programs for the entire country. The GSP also provides the geospatial data and products, expertise that is shared with our partners in tribal, federal, state, and local governments, as well as through various international forums as well. The GSP is comprised of the 8 core elements that are represented here in the graphic on the screen. Those are addresses, features, boundaries, geospatial reference data, frames, partnerships, expertise and leadership, and then lastly, the MAFTIGER system. Now, I want to pause real quick. Before I get into looking ahead, I just want to acknowledge that we collectively, like the Bureau and everyone there in the room and everyone in the virtual environment that's a part of the NSGIC community, we accomplished a lot in the last 10 years. And many of those accomplishments are due in large parts to the ongoing coordination that we at the Bureau have with a number of you in the States. So for that, thank you. Now, we're looking ahead to 2030. And we are working to finalize our vision that reflects lessons learned from last decade, along with some short-term budget planning. The vision for this decade is focusing on 5 general themes. 1, continue the programs, data offerings, methodologies, and procedures that work well. In other words, let's not fix what isn't broken. 2, capitalizing on our use of automated methods and technology. Next, performing continuous assessment of our geospatial data and products to ensure that they are relevant and that our stakeholders are getting what they need. And then improve and expand data in the MAFTIGER system so that the Census Bureau can support new and expanded uses. And then lastly, expand use of our data by partners, not only inside, but outside of the Census Bureau. How can we continue providing value to existing partners while also reaching new audiences? All right, so this gets us to our listening tour, what we are calling our listening tour. When we were drafting our vision for this decade, it was abundantly clear that it's incomplete without hearing directly from key external stakeholders. So we wanted to better understand how they have evolved over the last decade, their successes, their challenges. What have they had? What hurdles have they had to get over? Where they are heading next, and then, of course, how we at the Census Bureau can best serve not only our stakeholders but their communities. So enter the listening tour. So beginning in September of 2021 and lasting through the end of the calendar year, a number of staff in the Geography Division conducted a series of 5 focused meetings with stakeholders from tribal, state, and local governments, and other program stakeholders, including members of academia and non-for-profit organizations. Just to give you a little bit of background about how we went about inviting individuals to participate. They were selected based on prior engagement with the Geography Division in strategic planning sessions or participation in our partnership programs, such as the Boundary and Annexation Survey and the local update of Census Addresses Operation, or LUCA. As the slide here indicates at the bottom, we just recently finalized a report that summarizes all of the information that I'm about to cover on our findings and recommendations. That's been shared not only internally at the Bureau, but with all of the attendees of the listening tour. And I'd be happy to share that with the rest of the NSGIC community as well, once we're done here. Okay, so the map on the screen. This represents the coverage area of all of the participants in our 5 focused meetings. So first things first, this is just a start. This wasn't intended to be a one-time deal where we conducted some meetings in the fall, we got some input, we're done, thanks. Nope, this is just a start, and we understand that. We have more work to do, and we want to hear from more stakeholders. The ongoing stakeholder engagement that we have is going to be key to our success moving forward. I'll get into a little bit more about that closer towards the end of the presentation. Now, I'm not going to read through these. These are here just for your reference. They'll be available in the slides for everyone. These questions served as the starting points to kick off the discussions. They were merely just things to get us going, to discuss the challenges, changes to goals and plans of our stakeholders and their organizations over the course of the past decade and moving forward. All right, if you're looking for just one image, one word art image that summarizes everything that we discussed in the 5 meetings and 10 hours of discussion cumulatively, here it is, the top 100 common words that came up. This was harvested from over 300 pages of automated transcripts from the 10 hours of meetings. It should come as no surprise, like some of the words that you see here on the screen. I thought that this was pretty cool. Just wanted to share this with everybody. So now let's get into our findings. Again, coming up on these next series of slides and our findings and our recommendations, it's a lot of text. I will leave that there for you for reference and just try to key in on a few key points on each slide. So first things first, in partnership and communication, one of the things that we heard a lot during our discussions is that our partners want more return on investment style information to help them communicate the benefits of participating in our programs to their funding bodies and lower level governments. In other words, when we come knocking on your door and ask you to participate in BAS, our Boundary and Annexation Survey, or LUCA, each decade, we always get the question of why, and we can better communicate that why and explain to not only you, the participants, but those that you are reporting to, those that you are seeking funding from, why it is so important to participate in those programs. Another thing that we heard is that our partners want us to simplify things for them. One, if you're participating in a program, explore the possibility of being able to submit whole data files, being able to use your own GIS tools and applications, rather than being forced to use a tool that we may provide. And then lastly, opportunities to provide your geospatial data, your addresses, your boundaries, your feature updates on a schedule that better aligns with your own internal update cycle, as opposed to timing that is forced upon you by a specific program that we are conducting. Next, collaboration. So one of the things that we heard a lot that came up in the discussion is a desire for more flexible and frequent coordination and collaboration with us to improve geospatial data quality, and also to get rid of redundancy and reduce burden on lower level governments. I will get into some examples of this when we hit our recommendations section coming up. Then automated processes. We got some good information about what our partners are doing regarding automated processes, and that was exciting to hear because it aligns with some of the stuff that we are currently doing in geography division as well, including increased use of automated processes and artificial intelligence, implementing things like change detection into your geospatial data collection workflows and processes. Again, this aligns with some of our own plans for the decade, and I'll have a little bit more about that later. Geospatial data. One of the biggest things that we discussed, and it's something that we have discussed internally ourselves previously, was the desire for quicker access to data and applications. And that like data providers, including us at the Census Bureau, need to consider moving forward if it's still adequate to provide updated geospatial data at 6 or 12-month intervals. You know, like we produce our Tiger Line shapefiles once a year. We produce our partnership shapefiles once a year. Is that optimal? That's something that we need to consider and engage with our stakeholders to analyze that and find a solution that works for everyone and is mutually beneficial. Policy. I don't think that the number one thing here is going to come as much of a surprise to anyone, but we heard over and over and over again in our meetings that there is a general frustration about the constraints that Title 13 places on our ability to share address and structure point data. We heard many examples of how removing or reducing the legal constraints for sharing address and structure point data could better enable our partners to build complete address lists, assist first responders, better identify households without access to broadband, and even enable a more frequent targeted exchange of data that could be beneficial to both us and our partners. Okay, that was our summary of findings. Now we're going to jump into some of the recommendations that came from our sessions. Excuse me. So first things first, partnership and communication. So we at the Bureau can do a better job of maintaining and clearly defining our timeline of partnership programs throughout the decade. As I alluded to earlier, how participation in those programs impacts our intercensal data estimates, things such as the American Community Survey estimates, population estimates. How participation this decade in our programs is ultimately going to have an impact on the quality of the 2030 census, and how that participation could also have an impact to your local communities. Also, a partner portal. I've heard a number of folks today mention portals, open data, and everything. And that's exciting to hear, because that's something that we are currently working on creating for this decade, a one-stop shop, if you will, where our partners, whether it be tribal, state, local, federal, other federal agencies, all of our partners are able to hit up this partner portal to get entity-specific information regarding your entity, regarding a specific program that you're participating in. A better means of communicating directly with us. So we hear you, and we are working towards providing this. All right, let's move on to collaboration. The one point I want to point out regarding collaboration is, where possible, the Census Bureau should work with states and other high-level governments to acquire geospatial data updates to increase efficiency and reduce burden on local governments. And let me give a little bit more background information on that. This is something that we are already doing, but we want to do more of. Many of you are familiar with the Boundary and Annexation Survey. We have a number of state-level agreements with the BAS that outline how the Census Bureau and a particular state agency work together on the reporting of boundary updates. Chris Diller, when he gave his presentation earlier this afternoon about Wisconsin, alluded to the fact that Wisconsin, is coordinating with the Census Bureau to provide boundary updates. That's one example. Another example is with the state of Arkansas. Jonathan and Shelby and the team there at the Arkansas GIS office, we now work directly with them each year to, to acquire the boundary updates that then get uploaded into MapTiger and then are ultimately reflected in our products. That's such a huge benefit, where we can engage with one point of contact, one agency, to get data updates for an entire state, rather than in the state of Arkansas, for example, working with the more than 500 counties and cities throughout the entire state. So those are the types of things that we are doing and we want to do more of. Automated processes. So during the findings section, I mentioned, things like automated change detection. And I alluded to the fact that that aligns with our plans. And I'm happy to report that we're actively working to employ modern technology and data science techniques to better inform our data acquisition efforts moving forward. That's something that we are really excited about. And I hope at a future NSGIC we'll have more to share on that as we get going. All right, moving into geospatial data. Our recommendation here that I want to point out is that the Census Bureau should explore the creation of data products for new geographies, including self-defined geographies, in addition to our traditional products that are defined by census tracts and census blocks that many of you are so familiar with. And under policy, I just want to point out that one of the things that we really want to do this decade is have ongoing communication with our partners to identify new and useful geospatial data products and or frequencies of geospatial data exchange that can be mutually beneficial. And just to add on to that point, we understand that our data users drive what we do. And we're going to work to continue towards a better understanding of how we can best serve not only our current stakeholders, but any prospective stakeholders. We want to continue fostering those existing relationships and outreach to new partners so we can provide our customers with data that you need for your decision-making purposes. Okay, so with all of that said, what's next? Think back to the slide where I showed the map. When we got onto that slide, I mentioned we still have a lot of work to do. The 5 meetings that we conducted were really just a start. We recognize that there are a number of stakeholders that we have not yet heard from, and I encourage you to reach out to us. We know that we can accomplish a lot working together. We already have in the past, and we'll continue doing that in the future. Our ongoing collaboration with this group can not only improve our programs and make our data more relevant, but the resulting data can help improve all of our communities, businesses within those communities, create better opportunities, and ultimately enable our decision makers to solve the complex problems of not only today, but way down the road. So with that, that is the slide deck. And if you all have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Some of my colleagues from the Census Bureau are also with us today, so be more than happy to take any questions you have.
Nathan, it's Neil McGaffey from Massachusetts. Very pleased to see that or hear from the person that participated. You're listening to the thing that we pushed for certainly found its way into the report. So listening to her working well, that's great. My personal experience of census and the sort of interaction with the states, at least, is that even in 2010, but even more so in 2020, we had geography that would have improved what the census was using, but the issue was the census needed kind of a one-size-fits-all and had to go a particular route just for efficiency's sake, which I completely understand. It was a little thing in 2010. It was a bigger thing in 2020. By 2030, it's going to be a big deal. That is, say, the majority of the geography that you're interested in is going to be probably sourceable from state or local government sources. And yet you're going to have this minority case where they aren't yet there. So can you speak to how you might be thinking about handling that?
Neil, if I may ask, are you referring more to like improving the continuity with data, like in terms of better aligning, ensuring that your data, your like state level data for the state of Massachusetts, for example, better aligns with what we have in MathTiger?
Well, I think where what we've run up against is that our mapping of, say, boundary features is based on a more authoritative source than what you have, and you've factored a certain. I mean, it's not that you haven't included that kind of stuff, but we almost feel like it'd be better off simply adopting what we have wholesale and adjusting on your end as needed to take advantage of that.
Yeah, you are not the first to bring this up. We heard about this on a number of occasions during these 5 meetings that we held this past fall. It's something that we are exploring. Traditionally, through the Boundary and Annexation Survey, for example, one of the primary things that we really focus on is ensuring that the boundaries are accurate to the point that housing and population are allocated to the correct governments. But we know that spatial accuracy can still be improved, and that's something that we are actively discussing internally, and hopefully we'll be able to make some improvements on that front.
That's great. Thank you, Nathan. And Jamie, do you have anything in the chat that you want to highlight, or from your virtual friends?
You know, the big comment in the chat, Frank, was from you. I don't know if you want to share that.
Well, that's true. Yeah, so I'll just summarize by saying that I believe that the spirit you're bringing to this, the listening tour, coming to us 8 years in advance and opening the opportunity is exactly in the spirit not only of the Geospatial Data Act, but of the right thing to do, and really gets to those things we were talking about removing barriers, removing waste, and that sort of thing. And it's our people that are going to benefit. So the people we have to count every 10 years live at addresses we need to respond to every day, right? So if the resources that you're putting into kind of those nationwide programs that have to be something different for now are channeled into closing the gaps on things like the National Address Database, and then the hydro data comes from the NHD, and we're putting the resources into building those out that are now useful to you and myriad other things, I think we're right on it. So that's kind of the spirit that I think we can work together towards.
I'll be quick. It's Jenna from Arizona. Nathan, thank you for presenting and summarizing the listening tour. In a couple of your slides, you had differential privacy, but we didn't talk about it. So, I just feel compelled that we need to continue to understand the impacts and how we manage that. Can you say a couple words?
Yep, Jenna, you're right. It's in the slides. I didn't mention it. We heard everybody on the call, and it's something we continue to hear from governments almost on a weekly basis. The Census Bureau now is conducting its 2020 count question resolution operation, what we internally call CQR. And a number of the inquiries that we are receiving through CQR ultimately stem from a general misunderstanding or just lack of understanding of the data that's represented in the publicly released data at levels lower than the state. So we know that there needs to be better messaging around ensuring folks understand how differential privacy is impacting the data to ensure that it's being used correctly and accurately. So I'm not sure if any of my colleagues have anything that they would like to add on that, but we do hear you. I see Deirdre just came on.
Hi, Nathan. Hi, everyone. Nice to see everyone virtually. Yes, I was just writing in the chat. I wonder if it would be helpful to have one of the census experts that's focused on differential privacy come and meet with the NSGIC community. Because obviously we have a big job in geography division and we aren't the experts when it comes to differential privacy, but there are people that are that could help talk through some of your questions and provide good answers.
That would be very appreciated, Deidre. That would be wonderful.
Okay, so let's work together to get that set up for you.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. We really appreciate your participation.